The morning roll call always started the same way at Fort Blackstone's sniper training facility. Names rattled off assignments like machine gun fire, each one followed by a specific role, a designation, a purpose. Olivia Mitchell stood in the back corner of the briefing room, her spotting scope slung over one shoulder, listening to the familiar rhythm of organized exclusion. Rodriguez, primary sniper, Alpha Team. Walsh, designated marksman, Bravo Team. Thompson, long-range specialist, Charlie Team. The list went on. 23 names, 23 assignments, 23 purposes. Then came the end. Mitchell, equipment manager, auxiliary support, no team designation. The words hit the same every time. But today, they felt heavier. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Olivia had been at Fort Blackstone for 8 months now, longer than half the people who just got their assignments. She'd watched trainees come and go, watched them earn their badges, their respect, their place in the unit. She'd watched from the sidelines, cataloging ammunition and cleaning weapons, while others learned to take lives with surgical precision. But what nobody knew was that Olivia harbored a secret, one that could change everything if given the chance. Master Sergeant James Keller dismissed the group with his usual bark. Weapons check in 15. Anyone not ready gets latrine duty for a week. The room erupted in movement as soldiers grabbed their gear and headed for the door. Olivia waited until the crowd thinned before making her way to the exit. "Hey, bullet counter!" called out a voice behind her. She turned to see Eric Walsh, a broad-shouldered marksman with a perpetually smug expression. He was grinning, but not in a friendly way. "Still sorting brass today? Must be exciting work." His buddy Anthony Cruz chuckled. "Glad she's not on my team. Probably couldn't hit the broadside of a barn." Olivia kept walking. She'd learned months ago that responding only made it worse. But she caught the way Keller's eyes flicked toward her when Walsh used that nickname. The Master Sergeant didn't tell them to stop. He never did. Outside, the Montana morning was crisp and clear. The shooting range stretched out across the valley like a giant ruler, distance markers positioned at precise intervals. Mountains rose in the background, their peaks still dusted with snow even in the late spring. Olivia made her way to the equipment staging area, where mountains of gear waited to be organized, checked, and distributed. Ammunition boxes, cleaning kits, spotting scopes, ghillie suits, rangefinders, all the tools that could mean the difference between mission success and failure in the field. She began her work methodically, checking each piece of equipment against the inventory list. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, examining scopes for lens damage, testing the tension on bipods, ensuring every piece of equipment was in perfect working order. This was work she could do in her sleep, work she'd been doing for 8 months, while others learned to shoot. What they didn't realize was that every technique she observed was being memorized, every adjustment cataloged in her mind for a purpose they couldn't imagine. "At least someone's useful for something," she heard Cruz mutter as he passed by with his team. They were heading to the 1,000-yard range for qualification drills. Olivia had watched those drills dozens of times from a distance, memorizing every technique, every windage adjustment, every breathing pattern. She knew the procedures better than some of the trainees actually performing them. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Around noon, she overheard a conversation that made her stomach drop. Keller was talking to Captain Nathan Foster near the command trailer, their voices low, but not quite low enough. "The problem with Mitchell," Keller was saying, "is that she just doesn't have what it takes. Some people are natural shooters, natural killers. Others," he shrugged, "others are better suited for support roles." "Have you actually tested her capabilities?" Foster asked. "I've seen enough. She hesitates under pressure, lacks the killer instinct. I'm not putting my unit's reputation at risk to prove a point about diversity." Olivia's hand stilled on the rifle she was cleaning. Hesitates, lacks instinct. She'd never even been given a chance to show what she could do. Every request to join training exercises had been met with the same response. "You're not cleared for operational training." Quote. But what Keller didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Olivia had been training herself in secret, preparing for a moment that would shock them all. Every evening after the official training ended, she found quiet corners of the base where she could practice. She'd constructed a makeshift range behind the maintenance shed where she could work on her breathing and trigger control without anyone watching. She'd studied every manual, memorized every regulation, practiced every scenario she could imagine. Her personal training journal was hidden in her footlocker, filled with meticulous notes on windage calculations, bullet drop compensation, and range estimations. She could calculate the Coriolis effect on a round at 1,200 yards, adjust for humidity and barometric pressure, and identify wind patterns from the way grass moved across the valley. She'd trained her eyes to spot minute details at incredible distances, practiced holding her breath until her lungs burned, and developed the patience to remain perfectly still for hours. But none of that mattered if no one would give her a chance to prove it. That afternoon, she was assigned to inventory duty in the armory, while the rest of her unit conducted live-fire training exercises. Through the armory window, she could see the snipers moving into position along the ridgeline, their ghillie suits making them nearly invisible against the terrain. She watched them disappear into the landscape, carrying their rifles to training she'd never be allowed to attend. "One day," she whispered to herself, the words barely audible over the metallic click of rifles being racked into storage. "One day I'll show them what I can really do." Little did she know that day was coming sooner than she thought, and it would arrive with a crisis that would test every skill she'd secretly mastered. 3 weeks later, the rumors started. Olivia first heard them in the mess hall, whispered conversations that died when she approached, something about budget cuts and personnel reductions. She tried to ignore them, but the sideways glances and sudden silences were impossible to miss. The rumors gained substance when she overheard Keller talking to Lieutenant Colonel William Harrison outside the administrative building. She'd been returning equipment logs to the supply office when their voices carried across the courtyard. "Sir, I've got a unit that needs to be lean and efficient," Keller was saying. "Every person needs to pull their weight in combat situations. I can't afford to have someone who's just taking up space." "Are you talking about Mitchell?" Harrison's voice was measured, professional. "Yes, sir. 8 months in, and she's never been cleared for any operational training. She's basically a very expensive inventory clerk at this point." Olivia's blood went cold. She pressed herself against the wall, straining to hear more. "What's your recommendation, Sergeant?" "Transfer her to logistics, or better yet, discharge her altogether. She's not cut out for sniper operations." Harrison was quiet for a long moment. "I'll take it under consideration, but I want to see her full file first." The trap was closing around Olivia, but fate was about to deal a hand that would change everything. As their footsteps faded, Olivia realized she was shaking. Discharge. After everything she'd worked for, after all the training she'd done on her own time, they were talking about getting rid of her entirely. That evening, she found an unexpected ally. Sofia Vasquez was one of the few other female soldiers at Fort Blackstone, a tough-as-nails spotter who'd earned her place through sheer determination. She approached Olivia after evening chow, her expression serious. "We need to talk," Vasquez said quietly. "But not here." They walked to the edge of the base where the practice range created pockets of privacy. Vasquez lit a cigarette and studied Olivia for a long moment. "I heard Keller talking to Harrison today," she said finally. Olivia's heart sank. "About transferring me out?" "Yeah." Vasquez took a drag. "But here's the thing. I've been watching you. I see you practicing behind the maintenance shed. I see how you study the wind patterns, how you know every ballistics calculation by heart." Olivia stared at her. "You've been watching me?" "Kid, I've been where you are. 3 years ago, they tried to wash me out, too. Said I was too emotional, that I'd hesitate under pressure." Vasquez's smile was grim. "I proved them wrong, but only because someone gave me a chance. Keller won't give me a chance." "Maybe not, but chances have a way of creating themselves." Vasquez dropped her cigarette and ground it under her heel. "Keep practicing, keep preparing. And when the moment comes, and it will come, you better be ready." Neither woman knew that moment was exactly 2 weeks away, and it would arrive with life-or-death stakes. As they walked back toward the barracks, Vasquez added quietly, "There's something else you should know. Keller's been putting pressure on the trainees to complain about you. He wants documentation that you're a problem." Olivia's stomach churned. "What kind of complaints?" "Equipment errors, missing items, ammunition miscounts. Anything that makes you look incompetent." Vasquez's jaw tightened. Walsh and Cruz have been especially helpful in that regard. The next morning, Olivia found evidence of Vasquez's warning. A report had been filed claiming she'd provided the wrong ammunition for a training exercise, causing delays and safety concerns. The ammunition in question had been correctly issued according to her inventory logs, but somehow the boxes had been switched between her inspection and their use in training. She knew it was sabotage, but she couldn't prove it. The official record now showed an equipment error due to negligence by Specialist Mitchell. By the end of the week, 3 more similar reports had appeared in her file, each one small, each one plausible, each one another nail in the coffin of her military career. But Olivia didn't crumble. Instead, she adapted. She began documenting everything, photographing equipment before and after her inspections, logging exact times and conditions, creating her own paper trail. If they wanted to play games with her reputation, she'd be ready. More importantly, she intensified her secret training. The range behind the maintenance shed became her second home. She rigged increasingly complex shooting scenarios, timing herself, pushing her limits. She studied after-action reports and combat case studies, learning from every failure and success she could find. What she didn't know was that all this preparation was about to be put to the ultimate test. One evening, as she practiced controlled breathing in the fading light, she heard footsteps approaching. She tensed, expecting Keller or one of his cronies to catch her in the act. Instead, she saw Vasquez emerging from the shadows. "Not bad," Vasquez said, examining the makeshift range Olivia had constructed. "But you're overthinking your follow-through. In a real situation, you need something more instinctive." For the next hour, Vasquez taught Olivia techniques that weren't in any manual. Shortcuts learned through years of real-world experience. Tricks that could save precious seconds when lives were on the line. "Why are you helping me?" Olivia asked as they packed up. Vasquez was quiet for a moment. "Because talent shouldn't be wasted. And because Keller's not the only one who gets to decide who belongs in this unit." As they parted ways, Vasquez added one final warning. "Harrison's reviewing your file next week. Whatever Keller's planning, it's coming soon. Be ready." Olivia nodded. But inside she felt the walls closing in. She was running out of time to prove herself, and the people in power seemed determined to see her fail. But sometimes, when everything seems darkest, fate intervenes in the most unexpected way. The axe fell on a Tuesday morning in late October. Olivia was in the armory, conducting her daily equipment inventory, when Keller appeared in the doorway. His expression was unreadable, but she could sense the tension radiating from him like heat from an engine. "Mitchell, my office." Now. The walk across the base felt like a death march. Other soldiers stopped their conversations as they passed, sensing something significant was happening. Olivia kept her spine straight and her expression neutral, but inside her heart was hammering against her ribs. Keller's office was spartanly decorated. A few military citations on the wall, a single photo of his family on the desk. He closed the door behind them and gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit." Olivia sat, her hands folded in her lap. Keller opened a thick folder on his desk. "I've been reviewing your performance record, Mitchell. 8 months in the sniper unit, and your contributions have been—" He paused, searching for the word. "Minimal." He began reading from the reports, the equipment issues, the ammunition miscounts, the training delays. With each item, Olivia felt her military career slipping away. "Now," Keller continued, "I want to be fair, so I'm going to give you one final opportunity to prove you belong in this unit." Olivia's pulse quickened. "Sir?" "Tomorrow we're conducting a comprehensive field exercise. Long-range engagement, multiple targets, variable conditions." Keller's eyes were cold. "You'll be part of the evaluation team." For a moment, Olivia felt a surge of hope. Finally, a chance to show what she could do. Then Keller delivered the crushing blow. "You'll be observing and documenting performance metrics from the command post. Any trainee who fails to meet standard will be recycled, and you'll be responsible for the paperwork." The hope died in her chest. "Sir, I'd like to request participation in the actual exercise." Request denied. Keller's voice was flat. "You're not cleared for operational training, and frankly, I don't think you ever will be." He closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. "Mitchell, I'm going to be direct with you. This unit requires a certain caliber of soldier. We need people who can take a life without hesitation, who can maintain composure under extreme pressure. People who can eliminate targets, not just catalog them. Sir, if you just give me a chance to demonstrate." "I've seen enough." Keller stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "Report to the command post at 0600 tomorrow. Bring your clipboard." As Olivia stood to leave, Keller added one final insult. "And Mitchell, try not to get in anyone's way." Olivia had no idea that tomorrow would bring a crisis that would shatter every assumption about her capabilities. That evening, she called her brother Ryan back home in Pennsylvania. "They're gonna wash me out," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can feel it." "Come home," Ryan said immediately. "You don't need to prove anything to those people. Dad's security firm is always hiring." "No." The word came out harder than Olivia intended. "I'm not giving up. Not yet. Liv, honey, sometimes you have to know when to fold." "I've been folding for 8 months. I've been quiet. I've been patient. I've been everything they told me to be, and it's gotten me nowhere." She thought about Vasquez's words. Chances have a way of creating themselves. "I'm not leaving," Olivia said finally. "Not until I've shown them what I can really do." After hanging up, she sat in her empty barracks room, staring at the wall. Her roommate had been transferred out weeks ago, and the replacement had never arrived. The isolation was complete. Even her living space marked her as an outsider. She pulled out her training journal, flipping through pages of notes and calculations. Every wind condition, every distance adjustment, every breathing technique lived in her memory. Now she was ready for anything they could throw at her. The question was, would she ever get the chance to prove it? Unknown to Olivia, tomorrow would bring exactly that chance in the most dangerous way possible. As she prepared for bed, Olivia made a decision. Tomorrow's field exercise would be her last as an observer. One way or another, she was going to find a way to show them what she was capable of, even if it meant disobeying orders, even if it meant risking everything. Outside her window, the shooting range lay silent in the darkness, waiting for tomorrow's mission. Olivia stared at it through the night, imagining herself finally behind a rifle. Finally part of something that mattered. Tomorrow, she thought, tomorrow changes everything. She had no idea how right she was. The next morning arrived with a bitter cold that seeped through layers of clothing. Olivia stood at the command post, watching the pre-exercise preparations with the eye of someone who'd memorized every detail from months of observation. The snipers were checking their weapons, calculating initial firing solutions, reviewing their mission parameters. The exercise was ambitious, a multi-stage operation in rugged terrain with snipers rotating through different scenarios, moving targets, unknown distances, extreme angles. It was the kind of comprehensive evaluation that separated the competent from the exceptional. Olivia's job was to observe and document, nothing more. But fate was about to hand her the opportunity she'd been secretly preparing for. As she watched the final briefing, she noticed something the others had missed. The weather report showed an incoming storm system, with winds expected to shift dramatically throughout the morning. The terrain they'd be working in, a series of ridges about 15 miles north, was notorious for unpredictable wind patterns. She'd studied those ridges extensively during her own research, memorizing the topography, the wind channels, the natural hide positions. She knew that area better than some of the instructors leading the exercise. Vasquez approached her as the briefing concluded. "How you holding up, kid?" "I'm fine," Olivia said, though they both knew it was a lie. "Look, I know Keller's got it out for you, but sometimes the best thing you can do is prove them wrong by doing your job better than anyone else." Quote. Vasquez glanced around to make sure they weren't being overheard. "Even if your job is just watching and taking notes." "Sophia, what if I told you I've been studying those ridges for months?" That I know the wind patterns better than half the people going out there? Vasquez raised an eyebrow. I'd say that's exactly the kind of preparation I'd expect from someone who deserves to be in this unit. Before Olivia could respond, Keller's voice cut across the area. Mount up. First team moves out in 5 minutes. The exercise that would change everything was about to begin. The training exercise began with textbook precision. Olivia watched the first team deploy to their assigned positions, their ghillie suits making them nearly invisible against the Montana landscape. She documented everything: deployment time, weather conditions, team composition, equipment load. Her handwriting was precise, her observations detailed. If Keller wanted perfect documentation, she'd give him perfect documentation. An hour into the exercise, the first signs of trouble appeared. "Command, this is Alpha Team," came the voice over the radio. "We're experiencing stronger crosswinds than forecasted. Adjusting for 15 miles per hour from the northwest." Olivia looked up from her clipboard. Those weren't simple crosswinds. She'd studied the weather patterns in this area extensively. What they were experiencing was the leading edge of a complex wind system that would completely shift direction within the hour. She'd read enough meteorological reports to know that wind shifts at that altitude could turn a routine exercise into a complete failure. "Copy, Alpha Team," came the response from the command post. "Continue with the exercise." But the conditions continued to deteriorate. Olivia could see the distant figures of the snipers adjusting their positions, struggling to maintain accuracy as the environment turned against them. Her radio crackled again. "Command, this is Bravo Team. Having difficulty with target acquisition due to mirage effect. Requesting additional time." Olivia knew what that meant. The combination of sunlight and shifting air temperatures was creating visual distortions that made precise aiming nearly impossible. She'd studied this phenomenon extensively, knew exactly how to compensate for it, but no one was asking for her input. She began calculating in her head. If the wind continued to shift as she predicted, most of the snipers would miss their targets by significant margins. The exercise would be deemed a failure, ammunition would be wasted, and valuable training time would be lost. Olivia's secret knowledge was about to become crucial. 20 minutes later, her prediction proved accurate. "All stations, this is command. Accuracy rates are dropping below acceptable thresholds. We may need to abort the exercise." The exercise was on the verge of being canceled, but as teams began reporting their frustrations, Olivia heard something that made her blood run cold. "Command, this is Charlie Team. We've spotted what appears to be unauthorized personnel in the target area. Repeat, we have potential civilians in the hot zone." Olivia's heart skipped. Civilians in a live-fire exercise zone was a nightmare scenario. The training area was supposed to be secure, but occasionally hikers or hunters would ignore the posted warnings and trespass on military land. "Charlie Team, what's your visual confirmation?" came the urgent response from command. 3 individuals, approximately 800 yards from our position, moving east through the valley. They appear to be carrying hiking gear. All teams, cease fire immediately. I repeat, cease all firing. Olivia closed her eyes, visualizing the terrain. The valley where the civilians had been spotted was directly in the path of the storm front. Within minutes, visibility would drop drastically as the weather system moved in. If those hikers weren't found and evacuated quickly, they could be stranded in dangerous conditions, or worse, accidentally engaged by a sniper who hadn't received the ceasefire order due to radio interference. Command to all teams, we need a precise fix on those civilians before the weather deteriorates further. Who has the best visual? The responses came back negative. The civilians had been spotted briefly, but the combination of distance, terrain, and worsening weather conditions made it impossible to maintain visual contact. They needed someone who could predict where those hikers would be based on terrain knowledge, someone who could find them, despite the conditions. Olivia looked at her clipboard, at the careful notes she'd been making all morning. Then she looked at the radio in the command post, where voices were growing increasingly urgent, as they tried to figure out how to locate the civilians before conditions became Catastrophic. She made her decision. Dropping her clipboard, Olivia ran toward the equipment tent. Inside were spare rifles, including a Macmillan TAC 338 with a Schmidt and Bender scope, her preferred system from her secret training sessions. She quickly checked the weapon, grabbed ammunition, and a communications headset. As she emerged from the tent, rifle in hand, she could hear Keller shouting behind her. But she didn't stop. She had skills, she had knowledge, and she had a chance to save lives. For the first time in 8 months, Olivia Mitchell was done being invisible. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Mitchell?" Keller's voice cut through the commotion as Olivia approached the transport vehicles. The command post was in chaos as officers tried to coordinate the search for the civilians while simultaneously managing the aborted exercise. Captain Foster was frantically trying to establish communication with all teams as the weather began to interfere with radio signals. "Sir, I know that terrain," Olivia shouted over the increasing noise. "I've studied those ridges for months. I know where those hikers are likely headed, and I know how to find them before the storm hits." "You're not qualified for this mission." Keller grabbed her arm. "Get back to the command post." But Foster appeared at Keller's shoulder, his face grim. "What's your familiarity with the northern sector, Mitchell?" "Sir, I've mapped every trail, every ravine, every potential route through that valley. I've studied the weather patterns and know exactly how visibility will be affected as the storm moves in. More importantly, I know where those hikers would seek shelter when the weather turns." Foster looked at Keller, whose face was red with anger. "Sir, we're running out of time. If those civilians get caught in that storm, we could be looking at casualties." "She's not cleared for field operations," Keller insisted. "Neither was I when I had to make my first rescue," Foster said quietly. "Sometimes the mission chooses the person, not the other way around." The radio crackled with increasing desperation, sealing Olivia's fate. "Command, this is Alpha Team. Stormfront is moving in faster than expected. Visibility dropping rapidly. We've lost visual on the civilians." Olivia stepped forward. "Captain, I can find them. I know I can." Foster studied her for a long moment, then turned to the driver of the nearest vehicle. "Sergeant, what's your assessment?" The sergeant, a veteran with over 15 years of experience, looked Olivia up and down. "Sir, right now she's the only one volunteering who claims to know exactly where to look. And time isn't on our side." Vasquez, who'd been listening to the exchange, stepped forward. "Captain, I've seen her study those maps for months. If she says she knows where to look, I believe her." Keller's face was apoplectic. "This is insane. You're going to risk a search and rescue on someone who's never been field tested." "Sergeant, stand down," Foster commanded. "This is my call." He turned to Olivia. "You understand what you're volunteering for? This isn't a drill. The storm is intensifying. Communications may be compromised. And if you make a mistake, those civilians could die." "Yes, sir, I understand." Foster nodded once. "Gear up. You've got 2 minutes." The next few minutes would determine if 8 months of secret preparation had been worth it. The transport vehicle bounced along the rough terrain as Olivia checked her equipment one final time. The rifle was zeroed and ready. Her rangefinder, binoculars, and communications gear were secured. Every piece of equipment was exactly where she expected it to be. Vasquez, who had insisted on accompanying her as spotter, watched her preparations with newfound respect. "You ever been in a field operation before?" she asked. "No," Olivia admitted, "but I've run this scenario in my head 100 times. I know what to expect." Mental rehearsal is one thing, reality is another. Vasquez adjusted her own gear. "Trust your training, trust your instincts, and trust me to back you up." As the vehicle approached the drop point, Olivia felt a strange calm settle over her. This was what she'd been preparing for, even if she hadn't known it at the time. All those hours of practice, all those memorized procedures, all that studying, it had been leading to this moment. Through the vehicle's window, she could see the valley where the civilians had been spotted. The storm was intensifying, dark clouds rolling over the ridgeline, reducing visibility with each passing minute. Below, the terrain looked even more forbidding than in the topographical maps she'd studied. 5 minutes to drop point," the driver announced. Storms moving in fast from the northwest. Olivia checked her gear one final time. The rifle was secure, the ammunition accessible. In her mind, she ran through the plan: find high ground, locate the civilians, guide the rescue team to their position. Simple in theory, complex in execution. There, Vasquez pointed through the window. That ridge gives us the best vantage point over the eastern valley. Olivia nodded. It was exactly the position she would have chosen, high enough for visibility, protected enough to operate in deteriorating conditions. "I'm going to drop you here," the driver announced. "Radio check every 15 minutes. If you don't report in, we're coming to get you." Olivia positioned herself at the vehicle's door, her hand steady on her rifle. Outside, the wind was already picking up, carrying the first drops of rain. She'd never been in a real field operation, but this was different. This was stepping into a life-or-death situation where her skills would finally be put to the ultimate test. "Remember," Vasquez said, gripping her shoulder, "if things go wrong, we fall back and regroup. No heroes today." Olivia nodded, but they both knew that falling back might mean losing those civilians to the storm. Everything she'd secretly trained for came down to this single moment. She took a deep breath, checked her rifle one last time, and prepared to step into the storm. "Ready?" Vasquez asked. "Ready," Olivia confirmed. And then they were moving through the landscape, the vehicle disappearing behind them as they made their way toward the ridge that would give them their best chance of finding the missing hikers before the storm claimed its first victims. The moment Olivia left the vehicle, the world exploded into chaos. The wind hit her like a physical blow, nearly knocking her off balance as she moved toward the ridgeline. Rain began to fall in sharp, stinging drops that reduced visibility with each passing minute. She fought to maintain her bearings, using the terrain features she'd memorized from topographical maps as guides. "We need to reach that outcropping," she called to Vasquez over the increasing howl of the wind. "It gives us cover and visibility over the eastern valley where they were last seen." They moved deliberately through the landscape, keeping low and using natural features for protection against the worsening weather. The weight of the rifle across Olivia's back felt like an anchor, a reminder of the responsibility she'd taken on. These weren't paper targets or training scenarios anymore. Real lives depended on her skills. 40 minutes into their trek, they reached the outcropping. Olivia immediately set up her position, unpacking her rifle and establishing a stable shooting platform, while Vasquez scanned the valley with high-powered binoculars. "Visibility is dropping fast," Vasquez reported, her voice tight with concern. "If we don't find them in the next 20 minutes, we might lose them until the storm passes." Olivia adjusted her scope, calculating windage and elevation based on the conditions. The rain was getting heavier, and the wind was shifting unpredictably, exactly as she'd studied in her weather pattern research. This was the moment when all her secret preparation would either save lives or prove inadequate. "Command, this is Mitchell," she radioed. "We've established an observation post on the eastern ridge. Beginning area scan now." "Over." "Copy, Mitchell," came the crackled response. "Be advised, storm intensity is increasing. Estimated window for extraction is narrowing. You've got maybe 30 minutes before we have to pull everyone out." 30 minutes to find 3 lost hikers in a valley that stretched for miles, with visibility deteriorating by the second. This was the challenge that would test everything she'd learned. "I've got movement," Vasquez suddenly announced. 2 o'clock, approximately 600 yards, near the tree line. Olivia swung her rifle in that direction, peering through the scope. Through sheets of rain, she could make out blurry figures moving slowly along the valley floor. They appeared disoriented, huddled against the weather, clearly lost. "I see them," she confirmed. 3 individuals, moving east but deviating from the main trail. They're heading into danger. The hikers were moving toward a section of the valley that funneled into a narrow ravine, a death trap during flash flood conditions, which this storm was rapidly creating. Olivia had studied the water flow patterns in this region extensively. Those hikers had perhaps 15 minutes before their current path became a raging torrent. "Command, we've located the civilians," she radioed. "They're heading into Blackwater Ravine. Request immediate extraction team. Flash flood conditions imminent." "Copy that, Mitchell. Extraction team is mobilizing, but they're 20 minutes out. Can you make contact and redirect the civilians?" Olivia considered their options. They were too far away to physically reach the hikers before they entered the danger zone, and the storm was making verbal communication impossible at this distance. There was only one way to get their attention. "I need to take a shot," she told Vasquez. "A warning shot to redirect them." Vasquez looked skeptical. "In these conditions? That's a 600-yard shot with unpredictable wind shifts. Even experienced snipers would hesitate." "I've trained for this," Olivia insisted. "I know the ballistics. I know the wind patterns. I can place a round close enough to get their attention without endangering them." This was the moment when all those hours of secret practice, all those calculations she'd memorized, would be put to the ultimate test. A shot at this distance in these conditions would challenge the skills of even the most experienced sniper. For someone who had never fired in actual field conditions, it seemed impossible. But Olivia had prepared for the impossible. "Command, this is Mitchell," she radioed. "We're going to attempt to redirect the civilians with a warning shot. I need authorization." There was a long pause before the reply came. "Mitchell, be advised that Captain Foster has authorized one warning shot. Make it count." Olivia took a deep breath and settled behind her rifle. She ran through her mental checklist, adjusting for distance, elevation, wind speed, and the Coriolis effect. She factored in the humidity, the barometric pressure, and the bullet drop over 600 yards. Then she made additional calculations for the gusting wind that was creating unpredictable conditions. In her mind, she could hear Keller's voice. She hesitates under pressure, lacks the killer instinct. But this wasn't about killing. This was about saving lives through precision and control. The true essence of what it meant to be a sniper. "Wind shifting from northwest to northeast," Vasquez reported, watching the way the rain was moving across the valley, gusting to 25 miles per hour. Olivia made a final adjustment to her scope, targeting impact point 30 feet to their west. Should be close enough to get their attention without risk. She exhaled slowly, feeling her heartbeat steady as she had practiced countless times. The crosshairs settled on her target, a rock formation just beyond the hiker's position. Her finger took up the slack on the trigger. "Sending it," she whispered and squeezed. The rifle bucked against her shoulder as the round left the barrel, arcing through the storm toward its distant target. Time seemed to slow as Olivia watched through her scope, waiting for the impact. A second later, rock fragments exploded upward as the bullet struck exactly where she had aimed, 30 feet from the hikers. The civilians immediately stopped, looking toward the source of the sound. Olivia fired a second shot, this time targeting a position further east, away from the ravine. "They're changing direction," Vasquez confirmed, watching through her binoculars. "They've understood the message. They're moving towards safer ground." Olivia felt a surge of relief mixed with pride. Her first shots in actual field conditions had been perfect, not just accurate, but purposeful. She'd communicated through precision, saving lives not by taking them, but by demonstrating absolute control over her weapon. "Command, civilians are redirected toward extraction point Alpha. They're moving to safer terrain." "Copy that, Mitchell. Extraction team ETA 15 minutes. Maintain visual contact and continue to guide them if necessary." For the next 10 minutes, Olivia kept the hikers in her scope, ready to fire additional guidance shots if needed. But the civilians had understood her message, moving steadily toward the designated extraction point, where they would be safe from the flash flood danger. "You know what you just did, right?" Vasquez said quietly as they watched the extraction team finally reach the hikers. "My job," Olivia replied simply. "You just made 2 perfect shots at 600 yards in storm conditions that would challenge our best snipers. Shots that saved 3 lives." Vasquez shook her head in admiration. "That wasn't just doing your job. That was proving every doubt wrong." As they packed up their equipment to begin their own extraction, Olivia realized that this mission had changed everything. She had demonstrated skills that couldn't be dismissed or overlooked. She had proven herself not through argument or complaint, but through performance when it mattered most. Command, this is Mitchell. Civilians are secure with extraction team. We are returning to base. Copy that, Mitchell. Good work out there. Good work. Two simple words she'd never heard directed at her in 8 months at Fort Blackstone. Two words that marked the beginning of a transformation. The storm continued to rage as they made their way back to the extraction point, but Olivia barely noticed the discomfort. Inside, a different kind of storm was calming. The turmoil of doubt and frustration that had been her constant companion since joining the unit. Today, she had found her answer. Not in words or arguments, but in action. She had found her place at last, not by demanding it, but by earning it one precisely placed shot at a time. The landing zone at Fort Blackstone was crowded with personnel when their transport vehicle returned. Word of the rescue operation had spread quickly, and it seemed like half the base had turned out to see the aftermath. Olivia could see Keller standing near the command post, his expression unreadable. As the vehicle came to a stop, soldiers helped the rescued hikers into the medical facility for evaluation. Despite their ordeal, they appeared unharmed, just shaken and exhausted. One of them, a woman in her 30s, broke away from the medics long enough to approach Olivia. "They told me you are the one who fired those warning shots," she said, her voice still trembling slightly from the experience. "You saved our lives. We had no idea we were heading into a flash flood zone." "Just doing my job, ma'am," Olivia replied, the words feeling strange on her lips after 8 months of being told she wasn't capable of doing that job. "Well, your job is the reason my husband, my brother, and I are alive right now." The woman squeezed Olivia's hand. "Thank you." As the woman rejoined her family, Olivia found herself standing alone in the rain, the weight of her achievement settling around her like a new uniform. The crowd of onlookers stared at her with a mixture of curiosity and newfound respect. She could hear whispered conversations. "That's the equipment manager who's never been cleared for field operations. Did you hear about those shots? 600 yards in a storm. No way Keller can ignore this." But Olivia's real test was just beginning. Keller pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of controlled emotion. "Mitchell, my office. Now." As she followed him across the base, Olivia noticed that something had changed. Soldiers who had previously ignored her or joined in the ridicule now stepped aside, some even nodding in acknowledgement as she passed. It wasn't respect yet, but it was recognition, the first step toward belonging. In Keller's office, she found Captain Foster already waiting, along with Lieutenant Colonel Harrison. Their expressions gave nothing away as she stood at attention. "At ease, Specialist," Harrison said. "We've been discussing today's operation." Olivia relaxed her posture slightly but remained alert. This was the moment of reckoning. "Mitchell," Keller began, his voice tight. "Would you care to explain how an equipment manager who has never been cleared for sniper operations managed to execute 2 perfect shots at 600 yards in storm conditions?" Before she could answer, Foster interjected. "I think the more relevant question, Sergeant, is why an obviously qualified sniper has been relegated to equipment management for 8 months. Harrison held up a hand. "Let's hear from Specialist Mitchell first." He turned to Olivia. "Where did you learn those skills?" "Your file shows no advanced sniper training." Olivia straightened her shoulders. "I've been training myself, sir. Every evening for 8 months I've been practicing behind the maintenance shed. I've studied every manual, every ballistics table, every after-action report I could access. I've memorized the terrain features of our entire operating area because I knew that someday, knowledge like that might save lives." Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly. "You've been conducting unauthorized training?" "Yes, sir. Because I was never given the opportunity to participate in authorized training." "Despite repeated requests," Foster added, sliding a folder across the desk. "I've reviewed Mitchell's personnel file. She's submitted formal requests for sniper training evaluations 6 times, all denied by Sergeant Keller." Keller's jaw tightened. "Sir, I made those decisions based on my assessment of Mitchell's suitability for sniper operations. The psychological profile of a successful sniper includes the ability to remain calm under extreme pressure, demonstrate exceptional focus, and make life-or-death decisions with clarity. Harrison interrupted. All of which Specialist Mitchell demonstrated today in conditions that would challenge our most experienced operators. The room fell silent except for the sound of rain against the windows. Olivia could feel the balance of power shifting, months of dismissal and doubt being washed away by the undeniable evidence of her performance. Harrison turned to her again. Those warning shots today. Walk me through your process. Sir, I calculated the distance at approximately 623 yards. Wind was gusting northwest to northeast at 20 to 25 miles per hour. I adjusted for a 14-foot bullet drop at that distance, compensated for the Coriolis effect given our latitude, and factored in the barometric pressure effects on the round's trajectory. I aimed to place the first round 30 feet west of the hikers, positioned to get their attention without creating any risk. The second shot was placed east of their position to indicate the safe direction of travel. The room was silent as her detailed explanations sank in. Even Keller seemed momentarily at a loss for words. That's not just mechanical recitation of ballistics data, Foster said quietly. That's the analytical process of an experienced sniper. Harrison nodded slowly. Mitchell, where did you really learn to shoot like that? Olivia hesitated only briefly. My father was a Marine Scout sniper, sir. He taught me the fundamentals when I was growing up. When I joined the Army, I continued developing those skills on my own time. And you never mentioned this background because… Olivia glanced at Keller. Because Sergeant Keller made it clear from day one that he wasn't interested in my qualifications, sir. He'd already decided I didn't belong in a sniper unit. Harrison considered this information, his expression thoughtful. Then he turned to Keller. Sergeant, I'm temporarily reassigning Specialist Mitchell to Captain Foster's direct command for evaluation and appropriate training. I want a full assessment of her capabilities by the end of the month. Keller's face tightened, but he nodded. Yes, sir. After Keller was dismissed, Harrison leaned back in his chair and studied Olivia. Specialist Mitchell, I owe you an apology on behalf of this command. You've been misjudged and misused, and that's unacceptable leadership. Sir, I just want to do the job I signed up for. Your job description is about to change significantly. Harrison pulled out a form. I'm recommending you for immediate evaluation for sniper qualification. Additionally, I want you to document your training methods. The ability to maintain your skills without formal training for 8 months suggests an approach we might incorporate into our standard protocols. Olivia stared at him, hardly believing what she was hearing. Sir? What you did today required not just skill but innovation and exceptional mental discipline. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need more of in this unit, Foster added. As Olivia left the office, she felt like she was walking in a dream. 8 months of dismissal and doubt had been swept away in a single afternoon, replaced by the beginning of recognition. But more important than recognition was the confirmation of what she had always believed about herself. She belonged here, doing this work, regardless of what anyone else thought. Outside, she ran into Walsh, who had been waiting near the building. Heard you made some impossible shots out there, he said, his usual smugness replaced by something closer to awkward respect. Just doing my job, Olivia replied evenly. Walsh shifted uncomfortably. Look, Mitchell, I want to apologize for… She held up a hand. Save it. You don't owe me anything. Just remember this the next time you decide someone doesn't belong, based on how they look, or who they are. As she walked away, Walsh called after her. So are you joining Alpha Team now? Olivia smiled to herself. I don't know yet. But whatever team I join will be better for having me on it. 3 months later, Olivia stood on the firing line at Fort Blackstone's sniper qualification course, her rifle steady in her hands and confidence in her posture. But this time, she wasn't supporting from the sidelines or documenting other people's achievements. She was leading the advanced sniper training seminar that had become the most requested course on the base. The key to consistent long-range accuracy, she explained to the group of 15 snipers, isn't just understanding ballistics. It's developing an intuitive relationship with your environment. The wind doesn't care about your calculations or your comfort zone. It only responds to observation and adaptation. In the front row, Eric Walsh, the same soldier who had mocked her months earlier, raised his hand. Specialist Mitchell, when dealing with multiple wind channels across a valley, how do you prioritize which indicators to track? Quote. Olivia nodded approvingly. Walsh had become one of her most dedicated students after witnessing her performance during the rescue operation. The transformation in his attitude hadn't been immediate, but it had been genuine. Excellent question, Eric. Let's break it down with a practical scenario. After walking the group through a complex wind-reading exercise, Olivia dismissed the class for a brief break. As the snipers dispersed, she took a moment to appreciate how dramatically her circumstances had changed. In just 3 months, she had gone from being the overlooked equipment manager to holding the highest qualification scores in the unit's history. The evaluation Harrison had ordered had revealed what Olivia had always known. She wasn't just qualified to be in the sniper unit, she was exceptional. Her scores in target acquisition, ballistic problem-solving, and precision shooting under stress had set new standards for the program. More importantly, her innovative approaches to training had already been incorporated into the unit's protocols. Captain Foster approached as she was cleaning her rifle. "Outstanding session as always," he said. "I've got news that I think you'll want to hear." "Sir?" "Your training protocols have been selected for implementation Army-wide. Special Forces Command wants you to conduct training seminars at Fort Bragg and Camp Pendleton." Olivia felt a surge of pride, mixed with disbelief. "They want me to train Special Forces personnel?" "They want the sniper who revolutionized high-stress accuracy training," Foster corrected. "Your methods have already improved qualification rates by 30% across all sniper schools that have implemented them." Before Olivia could respond, her radio crackled to life. "Alpha Actual to Mitchell. Priority message, over." She keyed her radio. "Mitchell here. Go ahead, Alpha Actual. Command requires your presence for mission briefing. Immediate deployment. Report to operations." Foster's expression turned serious. "Looks like they need more than your training expertise now. You're being called up for an actual mission." As Olivia secured her equipment and headed toward the operations building, she reflected on how completely her life had transformed. She now held the highest sniper qualification in the unit's history, had developed training protocols being adopted Army-wide, and was about to receive her first official mission assignment. The woman once dismissed as a mere bullet counter was now being called upon when precision mattered most. In the operations center, she found Lieutenant Colonel Harrison waiting with a team of senior officers and intelligence personnel. Maps and satellite imagery covered the briefing table, and the atmosphere was tense with purpose. "Specialist Mitchell," Harrison greeted her. "Thank you for coming so quickly. We have a situation that requires your particular skill set." He gestured to the tactical display where a remote mountain outpost was highlighted. "Insurgents have taken control of this observation post on the Afghan-Pakistan border. They're holding 3 American intelligence officers hostage and threatening execution within 24 hours if their demands aren't met." Olivia studied the terrain, immediately noting the extreme distances and challenging environmental factors. "What's the mission parameters, sir?" "Extraction of the hostages is the primary objective," Harrison continued. "However, conventional assault has been deemed too high risk due to the hostages' proximity to their captors. We need precision elimination of the key targets simultaneously to create an extraction window." Colonel James Reynolds, the operation commander, stepped forward. "We need 3 shooters who can make simultaneous shots at over 1,000 yards in high-altitude variable wind conditions. Based on your qualification scores and your performance during the civilian rescue, you're our first choice for the primary position." Olivia absorbed this information, understanding the immense responsibility being placed on her shoulders. 3 months ago, she had been organizing ammunition boxes. Now she was being entrusted with a mission where American lives hung in the balance. "When do we deploy, sir?" "Wheels up in 90 minutes, Reynolds replied. "You'll meet your team on the tarmac. Any questions?" She had dozens, but only one that mattered. "Who's leading the sniper element, sir?" Reynolds smiled slightly. "You are, Specialist. Your kill zone, your call." As she left the briefing room to prepare, Olivia encountered Sergeant Keller in the hallway. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the weight of their complicated history hanging between them. "I heard about your deployment," Keller said finally. "Reynolds is putting you in charge of the sniper element. That's correct, Sergeant. Keller seemed to struggle with himself before speaking again. Mitchell, I want you to know. I was wrong about you. The admission clearly didn't come easily to him, but there was genuine regret in his voice. Why? Olivia asked simply. Why were you so determined to keep me out? Keller sighed. Because this job breaks people. I've seen it happen too many times. Taking a human life, even an enemy combatant, changes something inside you. I didn't think. He paused. I didn't think women should have to carry that burden. Olivia considered his words carefully. With all due respect, Sergeant, that wasn't your decision to make. It was mine. I know that now, he acknowledged. And for what it's worth, there's no one I'd rather have behind that rifle for this mission. Those hostages need the best. And right now, that's you. As he walked away, Olivia realized that his acknowledgement meant something to her, not because she needed his approval, but because it represented the final barrier falling. She had proven herself so completely that even her strongest detractor had been forced to recognize her value. 90 minutes later, she stood on the tarmac as a C-17 transport plane roared to life. Her spotter, Technical Sergeant David Chen, was reviewing weather data beside her while the third member of their team, Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, checked their equipment. Mitchell, Chen said as they prepared to board, "Is it true you trained yourself in secret for 8 months before anyone realized how good you were?" "Something like that," she smiled. "That's some serious dedication," Torres remarked. "Most people would have quit after the first month of being overlooked." Olivia shouldered her gear. "I didn't join to be recognized. I joined to make a difference. The rest is just noise." As the transport lifted off, carrying them toward a mission where lives would hang on the precision of their shots, Olivia found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her here. The months of secret practice, the ridicule, the doubt, all of it had forged something unbreakable within her, something that no amount of skepticism could diminish. 12 hours later, they were in position on a windswept ridge overlooking the target area. Through her scope, Olivia could see the hostage situation unfolding exactly as intelligence had described. 3 American captives, 7 insurgents, extreme distance, and environmental challenges that would test the limits of their skills. "Wind reading?" she asked Chen, who was monitoring conditions through specialized equipment. "Variable. 15 to 20 knots from the southwest, but shifting every 3 to 5 minutes. Humidity at 65%. Barometric pressure dropping." Olivia calculated the variables in her head, making micro-adjustments to her scope. "Torres, what's your status?" "Dialed in on target 3. Ready on your mark." She took a deep breath, feeling the familiar calm settle over her as she prepared for the shot that would define her career. 3 months ago, she had redirected lost hikers with warning shots. Today, she would be taking human lives to save others. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders, but she didn't flinch from it. "Command, this is Mitchell. Sniper element in position. Targets acquired. Requesting final authorization." "Mitchell, this is Command. You are authorized to execute." "Repeat, you are green to execute." Olivia made a final wind check, then gave the command that would synchronize their shots to within a fraction of a second. "On my mark, 3, 2, 1, execute." 3 rifles fired simultaneously, the sound echoing across the valley like thunder. Through her scope, Olivia watched as her target, the leader of the insurgent group, fell instantly. Torres and Chen's targets dropped in the same moment, creating the precise window needed for the extraction team to move in. "Targets down," she reported calmly. "Extraction team, you are clear to proceed." What followed was 20 minutes of tense coordination as the special operations team moved in to secure the hostages. Olivia and her sniper team provided overwatch, eliminating 2 additional threats that emerged during the extraction. Their precision was flawless, their coordination perfect. When the radio finally crackled with the message they'd been waiting for, packages secured, all friendlies accounted for, Olivia felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that the hostages were safe, pride in the performance of her team, and a somber acknowledgement of the lives she had taken, even in service of saving others. As they packed up their equipment to exfiltrate, Chen looked at her with newfound respect. "I've never seen shooting like that, especially under these conditions. How many confirmed kills did you have before today?" Quote, "None," Olivia admitted quietly. "These were my first." Torres stopped what he was doing, staring at her in disbelief. "You're telling me that was your first combat mission? Your first actual kills?" She nodded. "But you executed with the precision of someone who's been doing this for years," Chen said. "You didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. How is that possible?" Olivia considered the question. "Because when the moment comes that matters, it's not about how many times you've done it before. It's about how many times you've prepared yourself to do it perfectly when it counts." That was the lesson she had learned during 8 months of being overlooked and underestimated. While others had been concerned with appearances and assumptions, she had focused on preparation. And in the end, preparation had made all the difference. 1 month later, Olivia stood at attention in Fort Blackstone's main ceremony ground as Colonel Reynolds pinned the Army Commendation Medal to her uniform. The citation highlighted her exceptional performance during the hostage rescue operation, noting that her leadership of the sniper element had been critical to the successful extraction of 3 American personnel without casualties. But more significant than the medal was the new insignia on her uniform. The crossed rifles of a qualified sniper, earned not through connection or favoritism, but through undeniable skill and proven combat effectiveness. As she looked out at the assembled unit, Olivia saw faces that had once viewed her with skepticism now regarding her with respect. Walsh and Cruz stood at attention, genuine pride evident in their expressions. Vasquez smiled knowingly from her position with the training cadre. And even Keller, standing at the back of the formation, offered a solemn nod of acknowledgement. "Specialist Mitchell," Reynolds said as he completed the ceremony, "your actions have exemplified the highest traditions of military service. Moreover, your journey from equipment manager to combat-proven sniper serves as an inspiration to every soldier who faces obstacles and doubts. You've proven that determination and excellence cannot be denied, regardless of gender or preconception." After the ceremony, Harrison approached her with news that would shape the next phase of her career. "Mitchell, I've been authorized to offer you a position heading our new advanced sniper training program. Your methods, your persistence, and now your combat-proven effectiveness make you uniquely qualified to reshape how we develop snipers for the challenges of modern warfare." Olivia considered the offer. "With respect, sir, I'd like to complete at least 1 deployment cycle with a forward unit before taking on a training role. I believe I still have more to learn in the field." Harrison smiled. "I thought you might say that. Very well. You'll deploy with Alpha Team next month as their primary sniper. After that rotation, we'll revisit the training position." As the day's events concluded, Olivia found herself alone on the firing range where her journey had begun. The target stood silent in the distance, paper silhouettes waiting for rounds that would prove a shooter's worth. She remembered standing here 8 months ago, watching others train while she sorted brass and cleaned rifles. The woman who had once been relegated to counting bullets now had a confirmed kill count that had silenced every doubt. But more important than the numbers was what they represented: lives saved, missions accomplished, and barriers broken. As she prepared to leave, she noticed a young female private watching her from the edge of the range, the newest addition to the unit, standing exactly where Olivia had stood less than a year ago. In the private's eyes, she recognized a familiar mixture of determination and uncertainty. Olivia approached her. "Private, have you had any sniper training?" "No, ma'am," the young soldier replied. "They've got me managing equipment for now." "What's your name?" "Rivera, ma'am." Private First Class Sophia Rivera. Olivia studied her for a moment, seeing a reflection of her former self. "Rivera, do you want to learn how to shoot?" The private's eyes lit up. "More than anything, ma'am." "Then meet me here tomorrow at 0500. Bring a notepad and your full attention." Olivia smiled. "And be prepared to work harder than you've ever worked in your life." "Yes, ma'am." Rivera's excitement was palpable. "But Won't Sergeant Keller have a problem with that? Let me worry about Sergeant Keller. Olivia's expression softened slightly. Sometimes the most important shots we take aren't at targets, but at the barriers others place in our way. As she walked away, Olivia reflected on the cycle that was beginning again. Another overlooked soldier was preparing for her moment to shine, but this time with a mentor who understood the journey. The woman who had once been dismissed as unsuitable was now in a position to open doors that had been closed to her. Her story was far from over, but she'd already accomplished something that would last long after her military career ended. She'd shown the world that excellence cannot be denied, that determination eventually overcomes prejudice, and that sometimes the most dangerous person to underestimate is the one who has been quietly preparing for their moment to shine. The once overlooked equipment manager had become the sniper with the highest confirmed kill count in the unit, not because she had set out to prove anything, but because she had refused to let anyone else define her capabilities or her worth. In a world that often misjudges based on appearance, she had let her precision speak for itself. Her journey from spare parts to essential element wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was about the simple, powerful truth that talent and dedication will always find their target, no matter how many obstacles stand in the way. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.